And thank you for staying with us. This is our Election Eve special, bringing you the analysis that will set the tone for tomorrow. And the Super Delegate Conference coverage is brought to you in association with Petrosol. Clean fuel in full quantity is always a delightful experience. Every drop matters, yes, just as every penny counts. Did you know good quality fuel enhances your vehicle performance and reduces maintenance costs? Take no risk. In times like this, all you need is value for your money. Look no further. Drive to the next Petrosol fuel station. Yes, Petrosol, your go-to station for accurate quantity of high-quality fuel. Be a happy customer, filled with smiles. Drive more with smiles indeed and save more money. Petrosol, your clean fuel in full quantity. Petrosol, always a delightful experience. I'm still here with Winston Amwa. And guess who is joining us in the studio for a conversation? He is the Deputy General Secretary of the NPP, Haruna Mohammed. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Great to have you.
Thank you.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Ready for tomorrow?
Very, very ready.
What are the facts that suggest that you're ready? I mean, polling station materials gone. Of course, you're not conducting it, but this is your election. Ready?
Yes. So tomorrow is set for us. We have 17 centers that would be conducting these elections from. That is the asylum down headquarters of the New Patriotic Party and all the 16 regional capitals as designated by the National Council. The centers has been communicated by the Elections Committee. Materials has been sent. That was yesterday. Materials were received by every regional capital, and Electoral Commission has seized the opportunity to handle all these matters of election materials. Venues has been secured, and every arrangement for delegates to arrive at the center tomorrow at 9 a.m. to start casting their ballots has been ready, and the NPP headquarters is also ready for the elections tomorrow.
What about security? Because it's always important, right?
Yes, security.
Have you had a conversation with the IGP, and what is he telling you?
Yes, this conversation has come on, and the Elections Committee has had all these arrangements with the security. And security in this election is very key, very paramount, because this is one stage of our elections that we are taking further to the 2024 elections. And the Ghana Police Service is entirely holding the security. No any other security will be put in there except the police. And police has also taken measures to ensure that we have peaceful elections tomorrow.
Okay, so that you're sure won't happen. And also the key question of the guidelines. One of the things I saw is don't camp people, no meetings, etc., But why was that necessary?
Yes, you see, in every elections, it is good to make issues or points very clear. We saw that some regional executive committees had called for retreats where they are going to camp some members or the delegates for some particular point in time for them to end them on Saturday morning, that is tomorrow morning. These concerns were raised, and the elections committee seized the opportunity to pen down this particular guidelines and issued to every regional executive committee to take note of this particular arrangement, to give the aspirants the adequate time to have access to every delegate so that they could have their word to convince them either to get their votes. So this was something to make sure that there was level playing ground and that nothing untoward is
Was your fear that the meeting was being done to favor one aspirant over the other?
Not at all. Not at all.
But it's a level playing field. Why didn't we just meeting to have a retreat?
Yes, because
talk about party matters.
If they are at somewhere, I think that many other aspirants may not get the opportunity to meet them. So we have made sure that no party activity will take these delegates away from anywhere. They should be made available for every aspirant to have access to them. Try to talk to them, try to convince them, let them appreciate the fact that they want to lead a party. And this is where they also want to, and they must listen to them.
Winston, that was important, isn't it? Because considering how many of the other aspirants have been complaining that, there's been some coercion of the executives in favor Oh, Dr. Bawumia, it was important the party stepped in at some point.
I mean, it's important the party would come out to say this, but you know, the reality is that the party says these things. These are things that happen. I mean, somebody just sent me a message, oh, there's a campaign going on. I mean, I haven't verified. I'm not going to put anything out that I haven't verified.
Oh, but there are meetings today.
But there are meetings today. And so, for instance, today, if you go to Kumasi, constituency chairman are in a meeting. I mean, in a meeting...
The aspirants are still in a meeting. People
yes, their constituency chairman in a particular hotel. I mean, they are there. They are meeting persons. Some have actually said, oh, they are meeting people, including even the regional chairman, regional campaigns. I mean, that's something we've not been able to verify, so I'm not going to go into it. But the reality is this. It happens. No, let nobody. And so it's in the interest of the process for the party to say, don't do this. The party should not be seen as condoning these acts. The party should be seen as telling people, don't do this. And that's why it's important, for instance, when the General Secretary comes out and says, let nobody intimidate you. Go out there and vote. Go out there and vote the way you want to vote. It's important when the president comes out to say, I don't support anybody.
Although they don't believe him.
Well, you may not believe it.
I'm talking about the aspirant.
Well, the aspirant, but whatever it is, the president says, I don't support anybody. Look, you may not believe him, but he says, I don't support anybody. If you're an aspirant, take it and go and campaign and say the president doesn't support anybody. So let nobody come to you and say the president supports this person. If you're an aspirant, take the general secretary's word, go and campaign and say don't be intimidated. If you're an aspirant, take the directive and say don't let anybody come to you and do anything to you. That's the way the party is expected to behave. And the party is doing what is expected of the party. And so that's the way to go. It's good they have done that, but the reality is that people will defy it. And so as we speak, there are meetings going on. As we speak, there are campaigns going on. As we speak, a lot of things will happen. As we speak, people would resource others. And like I told you the last time, in this election, in elections of this nature, if you're very resourceful, you can do a lot of things.
That is clearly an important point. And Haruna, it is it not? I mean, because elections must not actually be free and fair. It must be seen to be free and fair.
It depends upon the angle you are looking at the elections. Perhaps there are two sides to election. One is to win, the other is to lose. When you lose, you definitely be looking for reasons to assign to your grounds. So whichever way it is, you could say it is fair, you could say it is free, and you could also say it is. So based on the angle that you're looking at it, because it is elections.
Now talking about that, I know sometimes you're going to elections, you get the aspirants to sign a bond, or, well, if I lose, whether I lose or not, first of all, I'm going to stay loyal to the party. Was there anything like that for this purpose?
Yes, there was.
There was, okay.
There was.
And what did they say? What were they required to sign?
Yes, they signed an undertaking that they would not, if I loses the election, I would not contest as an independent candidate or contest on another party's ticket against the New Patriotic Party. This bond was signed in the forms that all the 10 had picked. And it is also contained in the party's constitution under Article 13, 9 thereabout. You would see that particular bond that is being signed by them, which we call undertaking.
It's interesting. I mean,
Before we go on, Evans, I mean, this thing about signing an undertaking that I won't go independent, I won't contest with any party. Of course, they won't go independent. Of course, they won't contest on another party's ticket. But as to whether they join the campaign is the main issue. So, there's the undertaking. They must sign an undertaking that when they lose, they will go and campaign. But that also depends on who the flag bearer is and his willingness to have these persons on board. So it's okay, you're going to come. But for many people who are in the race, maybe to market themselves for another election, they won't go and
there are many of them. And tomorrow we'll talk about a lot of them who are in the race.
We'll talk about them.
But certainly not the vice president. And we talked about Alan Chamanting. Let's now look at Dr. Bawumia. And we're pitching them because obviously they're the two front runners. Now, if you look at his performance, for example, you can clearly look at his effect in terms of how he and the Akufo-Addo ticket have performed in elections. Right? And that is exactly what we've done. The first thing we've done is to go to his home region, just as we did with Alan. Okay, so let's start there. Winston, what do we see?
Well, I mean, from 1996, but I start from 2004 and 2008, so that makes that, you can easily compare the two. So in 2000, from 32.2% to 2008, the first time he shows up, and circle that for me, Evans, because
which year is
the
it?
2008 one. So you can see in 2004, he gets 32.2%.
So you want to draw a line here?
Yes, you want to draw a line
before
here.
and after.
Then also draw a line in 2000 elections.
Okay, that's before or after 2000?
No, just the 2000 election. I mean, I use these things to do a bit of analysis here. Okay, so watch this critically. In 2000 in the Northeast region, the NPP gets 11.3%.
Yeah.
That's the tenure of Aliu Mahama.
True.
As running mate.
True. That's the first time he showed up.
First time he shows up. By the second time Aliu Mahama shows up, it jumps to
significant uptick there.
Uptick there. I mean, about 200% increase in their votes to 32.2%. Then it increases again to 35%. That's the first time Dr. Bawumia shows up.
Okay.
That's the first time he shows up.
So the northern ticket was significant.
It was significant.
Both under Aliu
and under Bawumia.
Under Bawumia.
By the time you get to 2012, you see it moves to 44. But this is the thing in the Northeast region. Dr. Bawumia is from Wale Wale.
Yeah.
And so he's from the Northeast region. But when he showed up the first time, he gets 35%. The NPP gets 35%. Yeah. But of course, he would have been sent there to go and do the campaign. In 2012, it jumps to 44 to 49 in 2016. But then by 2020, the NPP is winning the Northeast region.
And I remember the first time we isolated this was the election eve of
2020. Yeah.
And it was fascinating because from a significantly underperforming side in 1996, if you like, to gradually eating. And the thing is, whilst that vote was increasing, the NDC kept falling.
Of course, they would fall because
and you see, particularly from 2008 when Bawumia stepped in, and that's the isolation you did. From 2000, where Bawumia is he was on the ballot, but he was on the ticket. NDC at the time was 53%, which is what you see here.
Yeah.
The next time Bawumia again was on the ticket, they had dropped to 52%.
Yeah.
Right? The next time, they go to 49%. Right? 48%. The next time, 47%.
Yeah.
So consistently, the Bawumia effect kept dragging the NDC down whilst increasing the MPP's vote. And the fascinating thing from the 2008 to 2000 elections is from 55% to 51%. You do the maths. In percentage terms, you are talking about what?
From 55 to
35%.
So you're looking at a percent. I mean, so you're looking at point increase. Basis point increase of 16%. 16%.
And that is what he will be arguing is his strength. The same way we did the numbers for, Alan Chamanting. This is what he'll be showing, that if you put me on the ticket, I have actually caused, in its effect, the defeat of the NDC, this was their strong region, as you see here with 75%. By the time that I did 4 elections, you put me in for 4 elections, you kept faith with me, I had caused their defeat in that region in the presidential, right? One of the things we need to do go into in November is now mine the data when it comes to parliamentary as well. So you see here and you see there, right? That is a significant sea change.
Exactly, it is, Evan. So if you look at it percentage-wise, you would see, so now I'm not looking at basis points, I'm looking at it percentage-wise. You see that the NPP's votes from 2008, where Dr. Bawumia got onto the ticket, is increased by 50%.
Yeah.
50%. We're looking at, about 50%. So you're looking at 35 so that's 16%. You strike that bit. So about 50% increase.
Here's something controversial that also caught my attention, because we did Alan Chamanting's home region, now Bawumia's home region. So in 2020, whereas Bawumia in his home region had delivered the best performance yet for the NPP in his home region, by 2020, Alan Chamanting, if he was taking the the glory for the previous year, was delivering the joint third West performance, right? For strategists of both parties, of both candidates, they will, and if you are watching us tonight, none of the things that me and you do sometimes on the show, we finish, and people are now hanging on to what we're saying. But the evidence shows that in their home regions, he has delivered in the last elections and consistently. It's not the same with Alan Chamanting. He's delivered the best performance in his home region in the last elections in the party's history. Alan Chamanting has delivered the joint third West performance in his home region, in Ashanti region. That could become a campaign message if you're meeting the delegates and want to play the numbers game.
And I'll do the same thing I did earlier. So, for instance, you'd have to look at, on the face of it, then we'll look at it and say, this is the position. And, I mean, I was going to do one of the things Dr. Bamia loves to do when it comes to percentage increase. So when you circle 2000 and look at 2004, the NPP's best performance, percentage increase-wise, is from 2000 to 2004.
With Aliu.
With Aliu Mahama. If we're to do that analysis, and I see Haruna, smiling. Haruna, why are you smiling? I'm interested in your views on this. And I just said I was going to do one of the things.
Let's ask you. Let's ask you. The smile on your face we need to tap into.
Because I like quantitative analysis.
Okay, so tell us.
Oh, I'm just looking at the figures.
And what are the figures? But he has a view. I want to hear.
Yes. Tell us your view.
No, I have a national view.
So what is the national view?
It's to get a candidate.
So I mean, one of the things that Dr. Bamia loves to do when it comes to the percentage, right? So you see from 11 to 32, it's like a 200% increase.
Yeah.
But because of my disagreements with him on that particular thing, you would bear something in mind. When you have low numbers and you increase, percentage-wise, it's huge. But the moment you have a quantum leap going forward, your increase, so we say, as the number increases, the percentage of increase decreases. Haruna, who likes quantitative analysis, will tell you. So that's my disagreement, Dr. Bamia. So I'm not going to do that kind of argument here. I'll say he's done well.
Let's stay up north and let's go to Savannah region. Again, we begin to see, and I found this also interesting because you see the gap there when we started 1996. Aliu comes in, right? And
in 2000?
In 2000 and moves the NPP up to 31%.
Yeah.
Right? And sustains it for the next elections, which is
33%.
33% in 2004. And then Bawumia comes in.
Moves to
and that's a brilliant increase too, right? Taking the baton from his own person who, of course, they all come from the same geographic location and moves it quite significantly to 39%. Now, can he sustain this beyond his first showing? And you begin to see a downward trend. The numbers tell the story.
Yeah, and you know the story. Again, that's the story behind the story that we talk about. John Mahama, he's from the Savannah region.
Yeah.
So this is 2008. John Mahama.
And this is John Mahama.
He is the running mate.
Yeah.
In 2012, John Mahama is the presidential candidate. So you can understand.
So there's a competition of the northern lineage.
Yes.
In elections.
Yes.
But because we are Kingsmen, but I have my man as the number one.
Yes.
And I have my man as the number two. Who will sway more? And your argument is that in that race,
in this case, because of also the John Mahama factor plays. Because in 2008, if you watch the performance here when Bamia is introduced, the NPP goes up. Because at the time also, John Mahama is a running mate. Mm-hmm. But the moment John Mahama becomes the candidate, and one of the things we'll do subsequently, later, we'll draw now the raw numbers and you begin to use those ones also for the analysis. But let's just use the percentage for now. So you can see it coming down.
Yeah.
It comes to 34, 33, but then it also goes up a little bit to 35.
In the last election.
In 2020. So you would ask yourself the question then, why is John Mahama at,
Mahama did
63, 64, and then he reduces to 63 again? Well, a lot of factors may play here. You can also look at other factors as, other candidates coming in. Abu Jinapor comes in, he wins the Damango seat, he pulls votes to the NPP side. So Adam Mutawakilu, who is in that particular seat, and it's the same for the voter again, for instance, when John Peter Mewu comes in and wins the Hohoe seat for the NPP, he's able to increase the president's numbers. What it tells you, what it tells you here also is the fact that sometimes you also could have parliamentary candidates doing a trick for you. That notwithstanding, don't take anything away from a vice presidential candidate when he and the president are the only two guaranteed positions going into any election.
And another important thing, again, looking at trends for Bawumia, is that as we saw in the last one, right, in 2020, he keeps his momentum. Even in this case, where from the two previous elections he's been dipping, in the last elections at least, he shows in both instances, as we've seen in 2016, as of out in the Northeast region. In Northeast region, in the last, he shows up. Even when he was performing poorly before, as in dipping, in the last election, he still moves up. And you know the thing, we talk about momentum, right? We talk about momentum a lot. So he is going to show that if you're as good as your last elections, and that's why if you talk to John Mahama, he's so confident now because his last election is 2020.
Yeah, and you see, this is the other thing. You're very right.
And it's banished the ghost of 2016.
You're very right. And
he wants us to forget about that.
And that's why, yes, John Mahama will make the point. And so if you look at these, and elections numbers do matter, okay? And this is the point. I'd make this point briefly. So, I keep talking about how the campaigning goes and the strategy you use in every campaign. I was in 2020, you decided to run away from ballot box. I was in Baku when
go together, Alex.
Well, that would be nice. When the second lady came to Baku to come and campaign. I listened to the Baku Naba as he spoke. I listened to him as he sent a message to the vice president, reminding him of his father and the Baku Naba's relationship. I was in that region also when I heard, of course, I'd already known that the vice president was going to be in the northern part of the country throughout the election period.
Yeah.
And this is the point I'm trying to make. So it sends a signal to you that when you have a candidate from a particular area taking part in an election, the people will reward their candidate.
Absolutely. I want us to go to Upper East region. And again, we are staying there because we're beginning to track that. And then you see, again, we're looking at the Bawumia effect here. Again, you go to 2008 when he showed up. Again, a strong performance, again, in the Upper East region of 35%. Right there. And again, it improves on the fortunes of Aliu Mahama, right, who was a vice then, who had then moved the party up to 31% the previous elections. But then again, something that we just saw in the previous slide, right, where he dipped in 2012, and you make the point about John Mahama's appearance as the face of the ballot in the election.
Yeah.
He then dips to 29% from that showing. Again, you see, whilst he dips in 2012, John Mahama is
up here,
is going up, right? So that clearly plays a role. But then in 2016, and 2016 makes sense because 2016 was a tsunami year that swept away the NPP. And of course, so swept away John Mahama as well, even in the Upper East. And Bawumia obviously takes advantage of that.
But you could see that in 2020, there's a reduction in the votes. So in 2020, it moves, so this is 34.9 to 34.4%. It drops. And you would see also that the NPP's performance in the Upper East region wasn't as good as it was in the 2020 elections. By the 2020 elections, and we've had this discussion before, and we have said that in every governing party going into the election seeking a second term, ordinarily you would see a reduction. But in the previous slide, in the northern region, he had the momentum going for him. But in the Upper East region, it goes down a little bit. And because you see Mahama then increasing from 60% to 63%. A lot of factors would also account for all of this. You see that, for instance, the NPPs, even their members of parliament did not perform well. It's actually part of the reason I have not always ascribed performances of members of parliament to presidential candidates or vice presidential candidates. And I think that the members of parliament really are the ones who contribute to the performance of the presidential candidate and the vice presidential
and then the final slide before we come back to Haruna on Bawumia. And why are we doing this? Because elections are about numbers.
Yeah.
They're about votes. So the delegates who are voting, why are they voting? Because they want somebody who will win them the elections. And that is why we looked at Alan's impact in his home region
Yeah.
and the numbers that he could bring when he was campaigning there for. And that's why we are also looking at this. So he was going around. Ultimately, regardless of what the promises he's making, you have to fundamentally tell the people that you can deliver the numbers in an election for them to win and break the 8. The last one we'll look at, and we are going to home regions, home territories, right, for Bawumia. Again, we'll draw the line here. He steps in, again, in the upper west region when Aliu Mahama had left the baton at 32. Same trend again we've seen. So each 2008 elections that we've seen in the Northern Territories, he's done fantastically well in 2008 when he stepped on the scene. And then, of course, same trend, right? In 2012, he then drops to 29%. Mahama takes that and just wins it handsomely with 65%. So you begin to see a trend. The Mahama showing in 2012 because he was on the ticket was good. And here's the thing, Winston. When I was looking at these analysis, you need to then ask yourself, if Bawumia gets on the ticket, just as we've been drawing the parallels between John Mahama and his significant showings, the first time he moved from number 2 to number 1, and the fantastic showings he did in the Northern Territories. If Bawumia moves from 2nd to 1st, assuming he wins in November and gets on the ballot, what would that mean for him in these Northern Territories, including his own home region? Now, my conclusion, based on the analysis of the John Mahama showing, is that it will obviously become a significant play or factor in his ability to move the numbers up, except that he has John Mahama still there.
He does have John Mahama.
That he has John Mahama.
But you see, we talked about the momentum in the Northeast region. We talked about the momentum in the Northern region. But in the Upper East and Upper West region, the momentum isn't there.
It's true.
So
as you see in the previous one,
yes,
it's dip marginally, but it's still a dip.
But this one, right, is significant.
It's significant.
You see,
from 35% to 39%.
And so some of the things you have to look at. You know, we've done the percentage analysis, and I've always insisted and I maintain positions, and I say that he's done well.
Yeah,
he's done so well for the NPP. I mean, I talked about the parliamentary candidates, but I think that presidential candidates, evidence from the 2020 election, let me just add this, evidence from the 2020 elections showed, for instance, that Akufo-Addo had 200,000 more votes than his parliamentary candidates, while John Mahama, the NDC parliamentary candidates, had 30,000 more votes than John Mahama. So that actually tells you that the presidential candidate, vice presidential candidate do matter, particularly the presidential candidate really matters in every election. One of the things we'll do subsequently, I mean, having done the percentages, is to draw out the raw
numbers. And also look at their contribution, the parliamentary, because I'm interested to see in the parliamentary numbers, how much did he rob off the candidates who were contesting in his home region? Did he go there to campaign for them? And did that sort of rob off their performance there also?
Parliamentary numbers, that's another...
It's a tricky area.
Very controversial area, because we've seen people actually going, we've seen Sketch and Blast before.
Yeah.
And so once you see the Sketch and Blast, you ask yourself the question, is that the case? Is that not the case? I think that when it comes to the parliamentary also, part of the reason why political parties will select persons that they believe can actually win parliamentary elections, not just because they want to have the majority in parliament, sometimes also they want to have people who can also increase their own votes, the votes of the presidential candidate. Except that when political parties begin to fail, there are people who may vote for the president and vote against the parliamentary candidate.
And why have we done this for the two front runners? We're asking the questions of the delegates tonight. Having seen this and having seen the numbers, what matters more to you? What is it that they're telling you that convinces you that they can win the vote for you in 2024? It comes down to the numbers, and that is why we've been looking at the effect of the two front runners. When we return from this break, we're going to focus solely on our friend in the studio, Haruna, who is the Deputy General Secretary. He said analysis. He was tempted to say something.
He will say something in return.
He was tempted to say something, but he held himself. Why? Because he is a National Executive Officer. And if he says something tonight, he will possibly would have caused a major consternation in the party Wednesday. But stay with us. When we return, we'll get his thoughts on what is set to happen tomorrow. This is your election headquarters and is always brought to you in association with Petrosol. And you're so live here on your election headquarters, the Super Delegates Conference of the NPP, and our coverage is brought to you in association with Petrosol, clean fuel in full quantity. It's always a delightful experience. Every drop matters, yes, just as every penny counts. Did you know good quality fuel, chances are that your fuel will require that brand to be Petrosol. It reduces maintenance costs as well. If you have good fuel in your car, well, take no risk and get value for your money. Look no further. Drive to the next Petrosol fuel station. Yes, Petrosol, your go-to station for accurate quantity of high-quality fuel. Be a happy customer. Fill with smiles. Drive more smiles. Save more money. Petrosol, your clean fuel in full quantity. Petrosol, always a delightful experience. And I still have with me in the studio Haruna, who's the Deputy General Secretary of the party. So we are looking ahead to tomorrow, right? Walk us through what's going to happen tomorrow. The mechanics of it.
Yes, tomorrow elections will begin at 9 and close at 1 p.m. We have 17 centers, 16 regional capitals, and the headquarters of the New Patriotic Party. We have a total of 955 delegates who will be casting their votes in the elections. And this comprises of that is Council of Reps, National Council reps from various regions, also foundation members of our party, the National Executive Committee, the Regional Executive Committees, past national officers, as stipulated by the Constitution. Voting would not be in queues where you come, you mention your name, they take and you go and vote. It's going to be a walk-in. You come in as soon as you arrive and nobody's voting, you walk straight for the ballot paper. You go into the booth, you vote, and you go and put it in the box.
Then you leave.
And you leave. They will not be allowed to take pictures of their ballot. Anybody that does that will go against the laws. The results will be compiled by the Electoral Commission. They will seize the opportunity to collate the results at the Electoral Commission headquarters tomorrow, and the declaration will be done at the party's headquarters. All the processes leading to the election is being done by the Elections Committee. All the communications regarding the processes has been made available to all stakeholders, including the media. Everything about tomorrow with regards to the election is the Electoral Commission of Ghana. The venues were booked by Electoral Commission, not the regional executive committees. No regional executive committee will have offhand to do anything with the election apart from casting their votes. There are national representatives who are at the various regions to assist the Electoral Commission, but not to conduct the elections at various centers. Security is handed over to police entirely. Police is to handle every security issue that will emanate from the processes.
Do you have any plans once the results are declared at the party headquarters for speeches, etc., by anybody?
First, before elections, there will not be any speeches. And we are not going to do it like a Congress, where we would have to have certain people to speak before it starts. It's going to be purely election.
So you go, you declare, you go.
You go.
Because anyway,
after declaration, I think that there will be interaction with media, more especially the General Secretary, the National Chairman of the party. Apart from that, nobody will have any conversation.
Well,
because
are there any of the aspirants, have they been invited to be there, or can they come?
Most of them will be voting at the headquarters. Most of them,
I mean,
they can come.
The declaration.
They can come around. Let's remember that this election is not the finality. This is just one of the processes.
We're allowed to interview them whilst after the declaration.
After declaration, this is just interview because nobody is elected. They have just passed through one of the stages of the elections as to reduce the number to 5.
The president will be voting where? There.
At the headquarters. The vice president will vote at the headquarters.
You know where John Kufuor will be voting?
He will vote at the headquarters.
We're talking about
vote at the headquarters.
Yeah, I mean,
he will vote at the headquarters.
But I think he's a foundation, but he's also part of the National Council. So
he's a foundation member and as well as a former president who, as by the constitution of our party, is supposed to vote.
So you have 2 centers in Greater Accra. There's one at YMCA and there's one at the party's headquarters.
We have 2 centers. We have 1 center in Greater Accra.
What about the YMCA one?
The YMCA one is for Greater Accra. That is the regional center.
Okay.
But the center at the headquarters of the party is not for Greater Accra.
It's for
the national officers, past national officers, Council of Elders, and other officers who are supposed to vote at the headquarters. At the regional center, we have the Regional Executive Committee, we have the National Council reps, we have the regional minister, we have members of parliament, and also foundation members. These are members that will be voting at the regional centers. But the other officers, national officers, past national officers, Council of Elders, foundation members who are resident in the capital that are voting at the national headquarters will cast their votes at the national headquarters, including the president, the vice president, the former presidents, and all thereabout. And all candidates that are entitled to vote, as in Governor Japan.
Are you allowed, is everybody allowed when you're going to polling station to wear the paraphernalia of your favorite candidate?
Not at all.
But today we went to your party's headquarters, which is a voting center. They splattered with pictures and posters of the aspirants.
They have come to post their pictures there. And because it is a national office, you can't bar anybody from posting.
But it's a voting center. You see my point, right? You say you cannot come to the voting center with a paraphernalia identifying who you're voting for. But the people themselves have come to plaster the main voting center.
Yeah, if you look at the interior aspect of the headquarters, there is no single poster.
That is in the inner perimeter.
In the inner
wall, the outside wall.
Outside wall. But the election is
that's campaigning.
The election is going to happen inside.
I get it.
So nobody inside the headquarters will see any poster.
But we'll see it as they enter. So why don't you, the party remove all these posters?
I think whilst we speak, because we are not just on this program for nothing, I think the elections committee is listening.
You know what I was saying that? Because today when we were doing the show, we sent the live coverage from there, and we're doing interaction with Master, live from the... You could see the posters. I'm like, this is campaigning, obviously, for the people who have managed to put their posters, they're free campaigning.
I want to do this. You're there to select the top 5. In 2014, you saw Joe Gatti and Adainimu both polling 22.
Okay.
22 actual votes.
Actual votes. What if you get 4 persons getting different votes, and the 5th person, you have 2 persons getting the same vote? That means you have 6 people who are supposed to qualify. What would the party do in another circumstance?
Per the guidelines of the elections committee, if that happens, they would conduct another elections on 2nd September.
Okay.
For
that tie.
For those 2 people.
For those 2 people.
And who vote in that election?
Same. And also on the 4th of November, if there is a tie, we would have elections on the 11th of November. Yes.
That's a runoff. Okay.
But so what you're actually saying is, and that is a possibility.
Yeah, it is.
It's a possibility because we've seen it in your party's elections before. If there's a tie at the bottom, say 5th and 6th, in fact, both of them will be joined 5th. There's going to be another election.
Yes, there will be. And that will be on the second. That will be on the 2nd.
And we have to come back and do this again for 2 people.
Yes, you will be here.
Okay. On that note,
that's the beauty of democracy.
and the thing about the NPP is they are doing already 4 primaries in the next 1 year alone.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, the 2 parliamentary primaries for Orphan and constituencies where you have, and then you have the November one. And then you are throwing in the possibility.
And even for the Orphan, we don't have one-off elections.
It's going to be spread over.
Goodness me.
when you're an incumbent and you have resources, that's what you see what NDC did.
No,
One day.
Evans,
One day.
Evans, it's
One
not about
day.
resources. We are setting a pace because we have always been the pace setters
Okay.
of democracy.
We'll see. Haruna, thank you very much.
Thank
Where will
you,
you be
Evans.
tomorrow in Accra, at the party's quarters?
I'll be at the headquarters.
Okay. Well, you want to join us because we'll be at the headquarters too. Not only at the headquarters, all 17 voting centers across the country. Our reporters are already on your way there. And as you've seen already when we started, they are there and picking up the sentiment. So when we come back at 7 a.m., Winston and myself, we're going to be going out of the studios and talking to the real people on the ground. So make a date. 7 a.m. sharp, we are back on air and we're with you until we know who will form the top 5. Winston.
Yes, that's it, Evan. So make sure you join us at 7 a.m. Do have a lovely evening and make sure you join us tomorrow at 7 a.m.